I've had a love-hate relationship with wireless guitar systems for nearly 20 years now. It seems that every time I find one I like, I can't use it anymore because of FCC regulations, or there are too many devices using the same frequency. And every time I upgrade, I have to shell out at least $500 or more for a prosumer system. Xvive has recently released the A58 guitar wireless system, a compact, reliable, and feature-packed system that only costs $150. Some of you may have experience with Xvive systems, like their U2 guitar wireless, U3 microphone wireless, or U4 in-ear monitor systems. This A58 breaks the U-naming system, which I thought was odd until I realized that 58 references the 5.8 GHz bandwidth it uses, which in my opinion is the biggest feature of this system. When ultra-high frequency systems started becoming popular, they were using the 2.4 GHz bandwidth, and if you're not familiar, this is a very popular bandwidth. It happens to be your basic Wi-Fi bandwidth. While this wasn't a huge deal 7 or 8 years ago, today so many devices use the 2.4 GHz bandwidth that a few of the guitar wireless systems I've used on that bandwidth have become unreliable. One system I used in particular would be perfect at home, but would randomly cut out at certain venues. And with a guitar signal, that is something you absolutely do not want. Having a system that uses the 5.0 GHz bandwidth significantly reduces the chances of dropouts. And so far, in my experience, this has been the case. I've used the system at home and at 3 different venues and have had 0 issues. Actually, I kind of had one, but it was easily fixed because of the channel scanning feature. The receiver will scan through its 6 channels and find the one with the least amount of interference. Combine that with its 100+ foot range, less than 5 milliseconds latency, 5-hour battery life, and 20 Hz to 20 kHz frequency response, and you've got a pretty impressive unit. Before I go any further, I should note that Xvive did provide me with this A58 system for review, but in no way will that affect my review, and they won't be seeing this video before it's released. Out of the box, the system comes with a nice case, instructions, a dual USB charging cable, and sticker sheet which includes Xvive stickers and numbered stickers to mark your units. A great option if you or your band are using multiple units. The transmitter and receiver have the same form factor, measuring 2.5 inches long by just under 1.5 inches wide, by 3/4 of an inch deep if you don't include the 1/4 inch pivoting plug, 7/8 of an inch if you include the bump from the plug. They each have a plastic housing and only weigh 1.5 ounces or 42 grams. They may be plastic, but they don't feel like a cheap plastic. I wouldn't worry about them shattering if they fall on the ground. A metal housing would be nice, but it's only a $150 system. They each have a USB-C charging port, a power switch, and a channel button which also doubles as a scan button on the receiver and active-passive mode button on the transmitter. On the top of each unit there are 8 LEDs, one for each of the 6 channels, a power LED indicating if the unit is on as well as the state of charge, and an additional LED which is dependent on the unit. On the receiver it indicates if it has made a wireless connection with a transmitter, and on the transmitter it indicates if the active pickup mode is on. I haven't mentioned the active pickup mode yet because I think it's pointless, but we'll get into that later. If you look at the bottom of each unit, you'll notice a little rubber pad to protect it from scratching your guitar. While this is a nice feature, I don't like to keep the transmitter parallel to the guitar body because it can spin around freely. I like to turn it perpendicular to the guitar body and bend it so that it contacts the body. While this will help it from spinning, the contact point does not have any rubber. This probably isn't a huge deal since the body is plastic and will be unlikely to scratch your guitar finish. It would be a different story if the body was metal. In the middle of the rubber pad, there is a screw which can be removed to access the battery door. This was a surprising feature to me. Xvive even mentions it on their product page. Looking at the battery, it's 3.8 volts with a 780 milliamp hour capacity. It also has the markings HJ773032, which might be a part number, but I couldn't find it anywhere on the internet. It doesn't look like Xvive offers a replacement battery at the moment, and I couldn't find one that would fit, but hopefully there will be options in the future. Before I go into the setup, I wanted to quickly mention the Xvive G1 Butterfly guitar stand. This stand is made of aluminum, folds up nicely for easy storage, and will accommodate electric and acoustic guitars with rubber pads that will safely contact the bottom and back of the guitar. The stand stays held open with a couple strong magnets, and the rotating foot at the back of the stand keeps it nice and sturdy. Learn more about it or pick one up at the links in the description. To set these suckers up, the first thing you'll want to do is flip the switch on the receiver to turn it on. The power LED will light up as well as one of the channel LEDs indicating which channel it is currently set to. From here, you can turn on the transmitter, make sure it's set to the same channel, and start jamming. But we're going to make sure the receiver is set to the channel with the least amount of interference. Before we scan, we want to make sure any other wireless devices we're going to use are on. Now hold down the channel scan button for a few seconds and it will start to scan through the channels 3 times, then end on the best channel. You do have to press the scan button within about 20 seconds of turning the unit on. So if the scan function isn't working, just power cycle the unit and you should be good to go. Now we'll turn on the transmitter and make sure it's set to the same channel as the receiver. Once they match, you'll see the wireless connection LED on the receiver light up, and now we're good to go. On the transmitter, you have the option to set it up for active or passive pickups by holding down the channel mode button after turning the unit on, similar to how you activate the scan function on the receiver. When active mode is on, the A LED will light up. I've never seen this feature on any guitar wireless I've used, and in my opinion, it seems useless. All it does is reduce the output level of the transmitter by about 9 decibels, which you can definitely hear. I'll show you some examples, but I won't waste your time. Just imagine you slightly turn down the volume knob on your guitar. Maybe there is a reason to have this function. If you can think of one, let me know in the comments. Now the real kicker. How do these perform? I could say that I've used this wireless at home and at 3 different venues with no issues and call it a day, but you know I'm going to go into more detail than that. First thing we'll look at is the range. Walking around my basement and house, I've had 0 issues with dropouts. Xvive claims to have over 100 feet or 30 meters of range. Testing this outside, I was able to walk over 200 feet or 60 meters without having any dropouts, as long as there was a direct line of sight between the transmitter and receiver. When I turned my body to be between them, I had a few quick dropouts starting around 120 feet or 36 meters, but it wasn't that bad even at 200 feet. One issue you will run into is the sound latency being that far away from your amp. At 100 feet or 30 meters, the latency will be about 90 milliseconds, which is very obvious. Double that and you're looking at 180 milliseconds. Chances are you won't be moving anywhere near that far from your amp, and if you do, you'll have floor monitors or even better, an in-ear monitor system like the Xvive U4. Either way, the great range on this should make you more confident that you won't have dropouts when your singer gets in your way all night. Looking at the battery life, Xvive claims 5 hours on both the receiver and transmitter. According to the manual, the power LEDs will also turn green when the battery is between 41 and 100% charged, yellow between 60 and 40%, red between 1 and 5%, and blinking red when they're less than 1%. With these numbers, we can estimate the LEDs will be green for the first 3 hours or so, then turn to yellow for the next hour and 45 minutes, then finally to red, which gives you about 15 minutes before they die. In my testing, the transmitter stayed green for 3 hours and 35 minutes, which is better than anticipated, but close to Xvive estimates. The receiver stayed green for an additional 53 minutes, making it 4 hours and 28 minutes. At this point, they should be dead in a half hour, right? Not quite. Another hour and 55 minutes later, their transducer turns red. At this point, the units have been on for 6 hours and 23 minutes. 56 minutes later, at 7 hours and 19 minutes, the receiver finally turns red. Both units were at yellow for about 2 hours and 50 minutes. At 7 hours and 31 minutes, they were both on but no longer linked. This is only 12 minutes after the receiver turned red. 19 minutes later, at 7 hours and 50 minutes, the transmitter dies, and 5 minutes later, the receiver dies. These numbers are far better than what Xvive claims, which is great news. Getting at least 7 hours on these is great. The only thing I didn't quite like for my testing is that once the receiver turns red, I only have 12 minutes left. This probably won't ever be a problem, but I would like to see a little more of a buffer in there. Having at least an hour on red would be great. At that point, you know you could finish your set and charge the units on a break. To be safe, you'll probably never want to start a gig with the units on yellow. As far as charging goes, Xvive claims a total of 2.5 hours to fully charge the units. It only took me about 2 hours and 20 minutes to charge both units. For signal reproduction, comparing the A58 system to a direct connection, the frequency response is very close, above 100 Hz. The lower you go beyond 100 Hz, the signal is attenuated. Granted, it isn't awful. We're only talking about 1.5 decibels at 20 Hz, 1 decibel at 30 Hz, and 0.5 decibel at around 45 Hz, and so on. For a guitar player, it really means nothing because you're probably going to be cutting those frequencies in the mix to make room for the bass guitar. If you're using the system with a bass guitar, you may need to ever so slightly boost your low end, but I highly doubt you would notice. The last thing we might want to worry about is the delay. Xvive claims less than 5 milliseconds, and I measured 4.8 milliseconds, right in spec. If you're worried about this delay, it's like having your ear 5.4 feet or 1.6 meters away from a speaker. And if you think that's really bad, this audio has been delayed for 4.8 milliseconds for the entire video. Did you notice? For only $150 US, I think Xvive really hit it out of the park with the A58 guitar wireless system. There really isn't anything bad I can say about the system. Sure, there are 5 GHz systems available that have more features, but they do cost 3 to 4 times or more what the A58 does. I actually have one of the more expensive systems, and I've been using the A58 in conjunction with that system as an additional transmitter, so I can leave it on a guitar. If you decide to go with A58, you won't be disappointed. Check out the links in the description for where to pick it up. But hey, until next time, rock on.